Hi class, this is your professor, Jeffrey Fowler, and I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss something with you that's relevant to our class. The question is, are justice and the law one and the same? What do you think? Well, I do not believe that they are always one and the same, although sometimes they are in alignment. Usually, I would say. But there are definitely exceptions. Years ago, when I was working on my undergraduate degree at Marshall University in West Virginia, we had a guest speaker who happened to be Mr. G. Gordon Liddy. For those of you who are younger, you may not be familiar with who he was, but he was one of the security people involved in the Watergate scandal with President Nixon. Mr. Liddy is quite outspoken and a very conservative individual. A very interesting individual, but also a person that has some ethical issues of questionable nature. However, in this class, one thing that I do remember is that he walked to one side of the blackboard and he wrote justice. He went to the other side of the blackboard and he wrote the law. And he told us that if we were going into corrections or law enforcement, and if we thought that these two concepts, that is law and justice, were always one and the same, that we would be sadly mistaken. I have to say that over 40 years in the law enforcement, military, and security professions, he was at least partially correct, in my opinion. For example, many of you are probably familiar with the 3 strikes and you're out law. What this basically means is that a judge does not have any flexibility in a particular case. So, for example, if a person commits robbery and is sentenced, once again they commit robbery and are found guilty. And the next time they steal a loaf of bread, which of course is theft, and they're found guilty, then in some states they'll go to jail for life. Now think about this for a little bit. Should we be sending a person who has committed 3 nonviolent crimes to jail for life, and we as taxpayers are supporting that person for life, or should we be attempting to rehabilitate this person? This is a question that, as you know from the course content, has been discussed pro and con, and we've tried various systems in America. Personally, I think that person should not be sent to a correctional facility in most cases, but should be monitored with electronic monitoring devices and work with a parole or probation officer in most cases. The 3 strikes you're outlaw is indicative of a major change that took place in American jurisprudence some time ago. As you may recall from what we've discussed in the class, the basis of American law is English common law. Under the English common law system, just as in our system, you are innocent until proven guilty. The system is based on a judge assessing the particular person on trial based on the particular circumstances of that case, but also taking into account the decisions of many other judges throughout history on similar cases. This is, in my opinion, very sound. However, in the American justice system today, this has been modified substantially. One example of this are our mandatory sentencing guidelines. What this means that a judge's flexibility in a particular case is limited by mandatory guidelines that he must or she must adhere to. What do you think about that? Is that a good system, or is that not a good system? Is there something perhaps that we could do that would be better? Perhaps we should return to an English common law system. The reason that mandatory sentencing guidelines, I believe, were put into place was because there was a general feeling that many people were given sentences that were too light. However, we must always balance this in the justice system. For example, we know now from DNA evidence that a considerable number of people who are found guilty of really heinous crimes and were sentenced to prison were not the people who perpetrated those crimes. And so we have to consider all of these factors. Now, based on what I've talked about here, give a little thought to whether justice and the law are the same thing. Those of you who are going to become corrections officers or law enforcement officers have wide discretionary powers in individual cases. Think about these concepts when you make decisions on the street. Okay? All right. Let's talk about this a little bit more. If you want to discuss this particular question that I've asked, I'll create a special forum for it today, and you can post your comments in there, and I'll respond. All right. Have a great day, and thanks a lot.